Everything in this video is alleged and my own opinion and from my own perspective. Please do your own research and come up with your own opinions.
An Adair County deputy is now out of a job after being arrested for leaving his 2-month-old baby inside of a vehicle.
Almaraz Antonio.
That little girl is in critical condition right here at the Methodist Children's Hospital. In the meantime, that deputy is now out of a job. Here's what we know.
Hi, I look like my daddy. I look like my daddy.
The 31-year-old former deputy had taken his 2-month-old little girl to a routine pediatrics appointment at 9 a.m. yesterday. Not until after 1 o'clock did he realize he left his daughter in the car for several hours. That child was found unresponsive. Then just before 2 p.m., investigators were made aware of the incident involving Almaraz when the hospital called the sheriff's office to report it.
When you become a mother, they say you feel the love for your child instantly. When I gave birth to my second baby, I wept. Not from pain, but from strength. I felt so strong. This is what I was born to do. I love being a mom. It is truly the greatest thing I feel I have ever accomplished. The past 2 years, however, have brought my confidence down like a major blow to the gut. My family has experienced a very horrific trauma. This event has formed a dark cloud over me that doesn't seem to stray too far. Always lurking in the shadows, always itching at my brain when we see family. Are they judging us? Are they remembering that day like I am? Do they think that I'm a failure? This is something I never talk about. Before this, I would have considered myself a very private and secluded person. But something changed. Last week, I'm sure you heard, or even worse, have seen that Charlie Kirk was executed in front of the world in real time. His assassination has changed something inside of me, like many others. I've known all along that what happened to my family, to my daughter, was not just tragic, but revealing. It wasn't simply an accident in our private lives. It was the result of a system that broke us, pushed my husband past human limits, and then abandoned us when everything collapsed. For 2 years, I've carried the weight of silence, replaying the horrific scene, the questions, the shame, the blame. But after watching Charlie Kirk's assassination, I realized that silence only protects those who allow injustice to continue. I can't carry this dark cloud in the shadows anymore. It's time to tell the truth, my truth, and share what really happened to my family. In the months leading up to my daughter's accident, my husband and I were planning on doing so much with our lives. We had plans on buying our first home. We had worked very hard on repairing our credit. We were ready to move on from apartment living and finally own something. My husband had worked in construction since he was 17 years old. It was paying the bills, we were comfortable, but he decided he wanted to do more. He wanted to do something big. You see, I was pregnant. I was pregnant with our second child, another girl. He told me he was always interested in law enforcement and the military. He investigated everything at that point, determined to make our life better. That is when he came across the Bexar County Sheriff's Department. At the time, they were advertising a very generous sign-on bonus, and we thought this opportunity would be great. He was already planning his timeline and how he was going to rank up, what position he wanted to do. He was interested in joining CERT, and then he thought about the Street to the Streets program. He was genuinely excited, so he signed up. The recruitment process was quick. Fitness tests, drug tests, identity verification, home check, background check, reference endorsements, lie detector tests, personality and character tests. I'm not sure if I'm missing anything, but it was like boom, 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 you're in. Now, this is where things kind of go a little sideways. At this point, my husband was a cadet and was starting in his class Echo. If I'm remembering correctly, it was supposed to be 2 weeks and basically an orientation for the new recruits, and then they were going to shadow deputies in the jail for 4 to 6 weeks, because essentially they need these recruits in the jail ASAP. Why? Well, they're understaffed, of course. My husband was enjoying his new job, getting a feel for working in the jail, but at the same time, we were beginning to stress about money. What we didn't realize when we signed our lives away to this organization was that this job pays good, but you need to do overtime. And in order to get paid your overtime, you must accumulate your overtime hours into a pool. A pool of over 100 hours. This overtime was mandatory. My husband would tell me before his shifts would end, someone would announce over the PA that officers needed to volunteer, or they would be selected for mandatory overtime. The recruits would begin to drop like flies. It was too much. But one thing about my husband is that he is determined and he stuck it out. He was off 1 day a week, sleeping at times 3 to 4 hours, before he had to get up and get ready to go back in. My husband was a ghost, a complete shell of himself compared to when he started working there. By the time we knew it, I was going to be 8 months pregnant. My daughter was due in early July. It was approaching very quickly. At this time, my husband's class was finally going to move forward with the academy, which meant that he was going to be attending the academy on my due date. This was an issue. If the recruits miss a single day, they forfeit their class and must start over. My husband made it very clear to me that he was not going to miss the birth of our daughter, even if that meant he would have to start over or not even go to the academy at all with his class. He spoke of the dilemma to the lieutenants of the academy and some other captains, and they agreed that my husband was an asset, and they wanted him to rank up to deputy as soon as possible. So there was no way that he was not going to the academy with his class. They offered him 3 off days from the time that I go into labor or on the chance that I get induced before then. Did you hear what I said? 3 days. That's it. I didn't tell my husband this at the time, but I was terrified. I had my 18-month-old autistic daughter, and I was about to have a newborn. And I was only going to have my husband home with me for 3 days. Are you kidding me? Luckily, while my husband was in the academy, overtime was not as bad. Recruits can't work in the jail while they are in the academy, so he was working a regular 9-to-5 schedule, it seemed. And it was nice to have my husband home again. Since there was no overtime, his pool had stopped accumulating, and he was right at the mark of getting his overtime pay. Before we knew it, my induction date was approaching, and I gave birth to my second baby girl in the beginning of July of 2023. The future for my little family looked so bright at the time. I was the happiest I think I've ever been. I think my husband and I both were. Our girls completed us, and we love them so much. August 3rd, 2023. There was a special ceremony for the cadets to receive their official hats. This ceremony could only be attended by very close family, 1 to 3 people max. I wanted to attend with my newborn daughter. There was no way I was going to be able to take my toddler at this time. She was and is a little firecracker. I wanted to be there to support my husband. I had prepared for a few days to plan for this event. My mother-in-law came over very early that morning and stayed with my toddler. I got myself and my baby ready, and we drove to the academy building. My daughter was asleep the entire time, had no idea what was going on. The room was small, with a very high ceiling and 3 rows of chairs on one side of the room, and then rows of chairs for the cadets in the center. At the front of the room was a table with all the hats lined up perfectly. The family sat at their seats patiently waiting for their loved ones to enter the room. Lieutenants and captains filled the room, and then I saw him for the first time with my own eyes. Sheriff Javier Salazar, waiting by the table of hats. The ceremony was quick. By the time it was my husband's turn to receive his hat, it had been maybe 15 minutes. They called his name, and I stood up with my daughter, walked to the front of the room, received my husband's hat from the sheriff, and placed it on my husband's head with our baby in my arms. Sheriff Salazar looked at my husband and said, "What are you doing? Kiss your wife." My husband and the other families in the room laughed as my husband gave me a quick kiss on the lips. When the ceremony was done, my husband walked me and our baby around the room to meet the lieutenants and the captains and the sheriff himself. When I met the sheriff, I shook his hand, looked him in the eyes, and told him, "It's very nice to finally meet you, sir." This is an interaction I will never forget to this day because I shook this man's hand. He met our baby and still did what he did to our family. I went home with our daughter, and my husband continued his day at the academy to practice for the graduation the next day. August 4th, 2023, the day of my husband's graduation from the academy. I cannot begin to describe how proud I was of my husband. He did this, put in so much time away from his family, and he was about to be an official deputy of the sheriff's department. The ceremony took place at a church, and we had some family join us to watch my husband's pinning. Both of our daughters attended the ceremony. My husband wanted all three of us to be there.
We're exceedingly proud of you. Welcome to the family.
Joshua Garcia.
Anissa Gonzalez.
Nathan Waddle. Fernando Guzman.
Justin Hernandez Garcia.
Gracie Mata.
Yasser Cabo.
Elba Marquez. Pedro Mita.
Adam Mireles. Raimundo Peña. Ezequiel Pleasant. Seth Ramirez. Jorge Ramon. Eric Rodriguez. Manuel Santiago Colón.
Raven Villanueva.
Do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of Detention Officer
of Detention Officer
of the State of Texas,
of the State of Texas,
in and for the State of Texas,
in and for the State of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of this state, so help me God.
and of this state, so help me God.
Congratulations, deputies.
After my husband graduated, he went back to work at the jail. He had a few days shadowing a deputy, and then it was back to supervising units, escorting inmates, and working overtime. This point in time is probably the darkest point in my life. I was completely alone, all the time. Pretty sure I had postpartum depression, but never got diagnosed because of the forthcoming event. The circumstances of my life were making it 10 times worse. My daughter, to no fault of her own, was undiagnosed autistic at the time, and she was not sleeping. I was exclusively breastfeeding and pumping at all hours of the day and night. I was exhausted. I had suffered a hemorrhage back when my husband was in the academy, and I was afraid that I was gonna die. I was only 2 months postpartum, and I felt absolutely defeated every single day. My husband, at the same time, was always working. I never saw him. The girls never saw him. The only time I saw my husband was when I was waking him up to go to work around 1 in the afternoon. He was getting off work around 7 in the morning, depending on when he was relieved by another deputy. He had the opportunity to take a class so he could carry a gun at the hospital. This was so he could transfer inmates to and from the hospital and guard them there. One of the very little things my husband remembers from this time was when he was taking this class, he was falling asleep in the middle of being tested while handling the gun. The instructor said nothing. This is absolutely repulsive. This shocked me when he told me, of course later on when he was telling me about this time. I know that there are laws in this country that will revoke a trucker's license if they work over a certain number of hours. So why was this acceptable? Sheriff Salazar? This article reads, a truck driver has a 14-hour window to complete their workday, which includes both driving and non-driving tasks. However, within this period, they are only allowed to drive for up to 11 hours. For example, if a driver starts their shift at 6 a.m., they must stop all work by 8 p.m., even if they have not completed 11 hours of driving. This rule helps regulate truck driver hours and prevent fatigue-related accidents. This is crazy. My husband worked 18 hours, multiple days a week, and yet this is the law for truck drivers so that they don't crash. I mean, if you're not concerned about this, then I don't know what to tell you, because there are other deputies in the jail right now that are working like this. It's crazy. It's mind-blowing. My husband was so exhausted that he was losing bits and pieces of his memory. I didn't know this at the time. He tells me now that he has so many holes in his memory from this time, it makes him frustrated. And rightfully so. I have emails between my husband and I at this time where he's telling me he asked a higher up to please put him anywhere else but the hospital. And they told him no. You see, when he was put on hospital duty, he had to sign out a Bexar County gun and then transport the inmate or inmates to the hospital or drive there, guard the inmate for his entire shift, wait for his relief to get there, which sometimes took over an hour. And then when the relief finally gets there, he has to drive back to county, turn the gun in, and then he's free to leave. The week of my daughter's accident, this exact scenario played out. Let me present you the emails. Also, side note, please excuse my husband's grammar. I know it's not the best, but I will read it how he meant to say it. September 15th, 2023. Me. How's work? Tony. Good. Just crazy busy. They asked me to go to the hospital tonight. I was trying here. He said he needs me out there. Me. Ugh, okay. Tony, I asked for a spot here where I knew I would leave on time, but he needs me out there. And I even tried booking. They actually had full staff tonight. Me. Dang. Tony, yeah, I tried them first. I know there I get out on time too. Hopefully it will be better today though. Maybe I get lucky and the guy gets here on time. Yeah, this was 3 days before my daughter's accident. 3. Here's a screenshot of what time he left the hospital and what time he got home. By the way, make sure you turn timelines on your Google account. You never know when you're gonna need it. Anyway, my husband was supposed to get off at 7 in the morning. Do you see what time he left the jail? 9 a.m. That's right. 2 hours after he's supposed to get off. My husband didn't make it home until 9:35 in the morning. He showered and went to bed at 10 o'clock. I woke him up at 12:50 p.m. so he could get ready for work. That's not even 3 hours of sleep. This was multiple times a week. He was dangerously sleep deprived. We both were. The week prior to September 18th, my daughter had her 2-month checkup scheduled. I was so tired that I rescheduled her appointment to the 18th. This was the second time I had rescheduled her appointment, and I was warned not to reschedule again because that would make her late for her vaccines. This is my warning to all parents. If you are sleep deprived for any reason, do not take your kid anywhere, no matter what anybody tells you. If I have a bad night for any reason now, I will refuse to go to anything scheduled prior. I don't care whose feelings I hurt or who tries to make me feel bad. Please, please hear my warning. Please. The night before the accident, my oldest had a hard time going to sleep. I don't remember much from that night other than my oldest was refusing to go to sleep. And my baby was cluster feeding. I texted my husband to remind him of the appointment in the morning because he wasn't replying to my emails. It was about 3 or 4 in the morning, if I remember correctly, when my oldest daughter was finally ready for bed. I went to my room with my daughter to feed her. And then hopefully put her down as well. I pumped, fed her, and it wasn't until about 6 in the morning when we finally went to sleep. My husband called me an hour later, letting me know he was off from work and on his way. I just remember crying and telling him I was so tired. I couldn't do it. He told me that he would do it, that he was already awake. We could take her to the appointment. He could take her to the appointment, and I agreed. My husband got home, and I got up, changed my daughter's diaper, packed her bag, and sent them on their way. I'll never forget the last kiss I gave her that morning. While my husband held her in her car seat. My husband and my daughter left, and I went to lay down. At this point, I was still awake. I texted with my husband, and the entire time, They were at the doctor's office. He let me know about her weight, and I gave him all her daily routine to relate to the doctor. When the appointment was done, my husband called me. He told me they were on their way home. At this point, I don't remember the last time I ate, so I asked him if he could stop for some breakfast. He agreed and went to a drive-thru. The phone call was silent while my husband waited in line and paid for the food. He left the restaurant and began to drive home. The last thing my husband told me was, "Okay, babe, I'll see you when we get home." I was falling asleep, and I told him, "Okay." And the phone call ended, and I fell asleep.